So as we were talking about, the topic for today is driving sales in COVID-19 scenario. I was just talking about, how it has been a global pandemic, and this global pandemic has impacted lives of many people across the world. There has been a loss of jobs, loss of revenues, loss of sales. There has been a huge impact on consumer demand. And if you really look into, there has been in the past few months, we have also observed there is a change in consumer behavior pattern. So with this context, let's look into, how do we go ahead. I was just, looking into this Economic Times, which had given a report on 9th June 2020 in Indian context, which talks about signs of recovery in May 2020. And here I would like to take the automobile sectors. The auto sales were basically zero in the month of April in Indian context. But in May 20, if you look into, Maruti Suzuki had a sale of 13,865 units. Toyota Kirloskar Motor had a sale of 1,639 units. Hyundai Motor India had 6,883 units. Mahindra and Mahindra, had a sales of around 3,867 units, and Mahindra Tractors had a sale of around 24,017 units. But if you correspondingly look to the last year, May 19 of Maruti Suzuki, there is a huge difference. In May 19, the sales of Maruti Suzuki was 1,23,250 to the current, May 20 sales of 13,865, which means there has been a dip of around 88%. Similarly, if you look into Toyota Kirloskar Motors, May 19 figures, it was 12,138, and May 20 it has been 1,639. So dip around 86%. Hyundai Motors, if you look into, 42,502. And to May 20 corresponding figure 6,883, which has been a dip of around 83%. Mahindras, if you look into, from May 19, 20,608 to now 3,869, there has been a dip of around 81%. And Mahindra Tractors, if you look, the Mahindra Tractors is I feel now the company which has really shown an increase from the corresponding year. If you really see from 23,539 to 24,017, around an increase of change of around 2%. Besides this, there are interesting other aspects which this Economic Times article showed about, which said that the signs of recovery in unemployment, 20.2% unemployment rate in last week of May, lowest since lockdown began. As we know, the lockdown began in India, especially around the month of March, and April was typically a complete lockdown, and May we had some concessions given during lockdown. So there was a signs of recovery in employment, especially in the month of May. 21 million jobs were added in May after sharp decline in April. That's also something very interesting to note. And besides, this some other interesting article which aspect which I would like to talk about is there has been a rise in FMCG sales, around 8 to 9% growth in May over April, as per the industry estimates. So if you really see, there has been a slight recovery in the month of May in Indian context, but there is still a lot to be desired. So this is as per the Economic Times, as I was mentioning, 9 June 2020 article. Now let's go to the next slide. Now if you look into the what are the changes which has happened into B2C market, now consumers have started shopping online. The many consumers who used to go offline and purchase goods, they've started purchasing online. They started downloading apps and they started shopping online. So this is something which has been observed, and consumers are now more willing to switch across. Okay. to new brands. They are ready to try new brands. They are ready to they browse through, since it has been observed that on average families spends a lot of screen time, especially, so they check in new websites. They also look into new grocery stores. Okay, this is as per the McKinsey report which I had sent across to all you participants. Okay, it is there in the page 36. I have taken it from there. And another thing which has been seen is that there has been a refocusing towards domestic and local activities. So these are the changes which has been observed in the B2C market. Now, another interesting aspect is that there are new ways of working for employees. Again, from the McKinsey report which I had sent to all of you, June 1st, 2020, page 36, 83% of employees are willing to work remotely versus 37% pre-COVID-19 scenario, which means the employees are ready to adapt to the new ways of working, which is a very interesting thing which has come across in this COVID-19 scenario. It has been also observed that 50% of respondents recommend the improvement of implementation of new technological tools, and there has been around 6% increase in efficiency through virtual working. Because as we know, for employees, especially in a country like India and all, where traveling takes a lot of time, on an average, an employee spends around 1 hour going to his office and 1 hour coming back. So he or she, the concerned employee, has been saving this time. And because of the saved time, there has been an increase in efficiency. So this is something which has been come about very interestingly for employees, as per the McKinsey report. And now another interesting thing is that we have seen that worldwide companies like Facebook and Twitter announced its intention to allow majorities of its workforce to be remote. So this is what has been seen. They are looking into a possibility even after COVID-19 scenario where the employees can work remotely. So I am sure many other companies would look into such changes. So in short, we are seeing a tremendous change which is happening in the work process for employees across the world. Now, the scenario also gives a rise to the need for new selling skills. For example, in pharmaceutical company, now the physicians want medical representatives to, basically promotes using digital platform. So they do not want the medical representatives to come offline. They want the representatives to come online. So besides this, the challenge for also companies to focus on new selling skills for sales representatives using technology. And so which means what? Which means the sales representative has to be adept with the new digital platforms. They have to be adept with the new digital marketing practices. And another important aspect is the art of selling online is different from art of selling offline. Okay, when you look into selling offline, it's very important with respect to your personal interaction, which means your the way you approach, your body language, everything matters a lot. Okay, before you start a conversation with your customer. But when you look into selling online, it's very important to be adept with the new digital platform. I should be able to use it. I should be able to understand, how to handle, issues when there are technical failures. I should be able to engage my customer, whether it's a physician, whether it's a corporate person. How do I engage? What are the content I would like to show? How can I keep it engaging? How can I keep my slides attractive? Which means there is a need for making the concerned representatives understand that the art of selling online is different from art of selling offline. So this scenario has really posed a challenge for companies to make the, especially the ground personnel adapt to the current realities. Now let's look into what are the various challenges which the COVID-19 scenario has posed to companies. First is, for every company when you look into, they have to define the existing situation of business. Now, this is something very challenging because we have seen how externally there has been a huge impact. So the time is important for the proprietors to introspect the current scenario of business. Only after introspection and a discussion with like-minded people, then we will be able to define the existing situation of business. So that's my submission. Then the another aspect for the companies is, how do I deal with the new scenario? How do I deal with new technologies? Okay, if I have to communicate to my especially target audience, how do I especially look into my channels of distribution? How do I motivate people? Because there's a sense of panic, and as we know, if our internal customers are not taken care of, our external customers would always be impacted. So it's very important to deal first with the internal people, because there is a sense of panic among internal customers. They feel whether their job would exist or not, whether they would be relevant in the new scenario. In such a scenario, it's very important for the companies to assure the people. In this context, let me tell you what these big companies like Infosys and if you talk about TCS, what they are doing. The top management, in order to cut down jobs, they have been started taking a huge pay cuts. So this is something which the top management have to really look into. I was just speaking to one of my friends who works with Hindustan Lever, and she was saying to me that when the scenario happened, the chairman of the company had an internal interaction with all the employees, important for the top management to communicate with all the people. They explained the scenario, they explained what are the challenges, they assured them of their salaries, which is important, as we know, and they also told them that we'll be taking the stock about this current scenario in the month of August, which means what? There has to be a clear communication which comes from top management. Panic arises when there is no clear communication, when there is a gap in communication. So this is where I feel dealing with new scenario is very important. Defining the process well, communicating to your internal customers, focusing on new technology, making people adapt to new technology, and focusing on channels of distribution. For example, let me say, I'll take with the context of teaching itself. For teachers like us, it has been a challenge, basically going from offline teaching to online teaching. But what are the one good thing which has happened is that all of us has embraced the change very positively, and now our college itself is looking into delivering lectures through online, and we have been looking into Microsoft Teams, and on an virtually on a week daily basis from the last week onwards, we are having some or other webinars. We are having assignments given where we have to work on the assignments and share it with the concerned facilitator. So it is basically how you make people comfortable with the technology. That is how one has to deal with the new scenario. The third aspect is, how do I develop action, short term as well as long term. Now this is something which is very challenging, and there are no golden rules for it. Short term, with a loss of sales, loss of revenues, how do I plan my action is something which the concerned top management has to work out with its employees, and they also have to have a long-term perspective. It's very important, as I mentioned, not to panic. Okay, because panic leads to fear, and once is grappled with fear, you cannot get into any sort of positive action. So these are the challenges when you look into COVID-19 scenario, and I focused into 3Ds, which is define, deal, and develop. Now let's look into the opportunities which are there in COVID-19 scenario. If you look into the opportunities, there are tremendous opportunities for companies now. Basically, to move from red ocean strategy to blue ocean strategy. In an existing scenario where we were competing with existing business, you can obviously look into getting into new technological space. By through disruption of new technology, you can enter into new market space, which will be difficult for the competitors to get in. So there's a tremendous opportunity for companies to move from red ocean strategy to blue ocean strategy. Second aspect is the new ways of communication. Basically, to reach out to customer and to look for continuous customer engagement. Now, when we look into communicating with the customer, the communication has to go beyond transaction. Okay, because when you focus only on transaction, okay, then you cannot have a connect. I always believe that whatever communication has to focus on, it has to first initially focus on the overall well-being of a customer. Please understand that once when you look into the overall well-being of a customer, and then if you communicate about your respective goods and services, the chances of reaching out to the customer are very, very high. Third aspect is the company should start focusing on special social initiatives to help government and help develop the brand. The companies which demonstrate a caring side to customers will have a strong brand recollection. So basically, you could help out, government in terms of lending out facilities. I've seen, companies lending out facilities, especially for government, for COVID-19 patients. So if a company demonstrate a caring side, they can help build a strong brand. And if there is a strong brand recollection, it helps to drive sales. It also helps to build basically social responsibility. Another aspect is that self-reliance, Atmanirbhar concept. What do I mean by Atmanirbhar? Atmanirbhar, as our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has focused upon, is to produce things in a country indigenously. It is high time that companies also start looking into having this Atmanirbhar or self-reliance concept. Only if you have Atmanirbhar, then only you can able to overcome this crisis which has grappled the whole entire world. Thank you. Thank you.